Call to meeting the Planning and Zoning Commission for Monday, September 14th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Tony Gogenbach, Mark Heidrich, Mark Kleesner. Here. Mark Piontek.
Here.
Tom Holdmeier.
Here.
Sandy Lucy. Here. John Borgman.
Here.
Chuck Watson.
Here.
Samantha Wacker. Here. Carolyn Witt. Here. Sal Maniaci.
Here.
Gretchen Patet. Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the August 10th meeting.
Tom, I had one correction to that. On item number 3, it should indicate in the vote that I abstained. But other than that, I would move to accept the minutes with that correction.
Second.
Anybody else? Comments? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Moving on to item number 3, file number 20-0901. Applicant is requesting to rezone property located at West 2nd Street from R20 Residential Overlay District to PDR Planned Developmental Residential. Sal?
Yes, thank you. So just like Tom explained, this application is to rezone these 3 parcels here along 2nd Street, and they do touch over to 3rd. I'll show you the site plan and show that there's nothing proposed on 3rd, but there's 3 parcels. It does reach up to Stafford, so it's 2nd and Stafford, and then down about a stretch of a block and a half here, the length. So the surrounding zoning, you can see this is all R2 overlay, and that R2 overlay is one of our few overlay districts we have in the city where it allows for single-family and two-family uses. And you can kind of see downtown adjacent, all of this area up to High Street is R2 overlay, and it does go south to Fish Street to allow for that kind of mixed of different single, two-family, multifamily uses. The applicant is requesting to rezone all 3 of these parcels and then eventually with a final development plan platted out into individual units. I do want to show this, just because I know it'll come up later and we'll address it in the plans. This is the floodplain for this area. This is the 100-year floodplain, and it kind of looks like this is because there is a culvert here. That this is technically a creek, what they call a USGS Blue Stream, that gets this portion of 2nd Street and is actually buried. And so this creek actually is in a culvert, has been for years, and it gets back down to the river. I know it looks like here it's over those houses. I believe when these were developed, they did what's considered a letter of map amendment to adjust that because of you can get that done with FEMA by making improvements to other areas in the watershed. So I just don't think this has been updated from FEMA. This is an overlay we get online. But this general area, for as far as we know, is still accurate on the subject property. So here is the site plan. I'll kind of zoom into a couple different locations here because this is kind of hard to tell with the topo and all the lots on here. But it is shown in 2 phases, and it's proposing 18 townhomes. Technically single-family residential, but they are shared walls, which is why it is required a planned residential. So a lot of the townhome development we've seen recently over the years downtown and in this general area is actually in the C3 downtown district, and that district allows for 0 lot line shared walls. R2 overlay does not. Even though this is downtown adjacent, we did not recommend to the developer or the applicant to request the C3 zoning district because, as you can tell from the zoning map, it is not adjacent to C3. We try and keep a pattern of our downtown district. We have expanded it over the years, but we try to do only in times when it is adjacent to an existing C3 district. And so in this case, we recommended to them that they go to PDR, Planned Residential. That is our zone district that, again, we've kind of, it used to be R4. We've changed in 2017, and now we've had it requested a couple times this year to allow for more unique residential developments that wouldn't traditionally be permitted in the underlying zone district. So again, here they do show an access point, a main access point on 2nd Street. a 26-foot drive lane that does meet our fire code requirements, and it will have what I'll call an alley. It's really a fire lane. It won't be publicly dedicated. Really fire lane driveway to the rear, but it is kind of will serve as an alley all the way to the rear of these units, back up west to Stafford Street, and we'll have an outlet which is required as part of the fire code as well. So this is kind of zoomed in here. You can see this 26-foot wide access along Stafford that'll then come down to the rear of the units, and this is all shown in Phase 1. So Phase 1 does have 11 townhomes proposed. These smaller boxes on the rear are the garages, so it's a single-story garage, and then I believe a two-story unit, and you'll see in the rendering that rendering wasn't finalized. That was something we require some type of architectural design to be submitted so we know what it's going to look like, but it doesn't have to be the final renderings yet. But I believe this will be a single-story garage and then two-story structures, and the applicant is here will be able to answer those questions. So the alley continues down here, and it does keep that 26-foot requirement. I wanted to zoom in on this section here because this will become important. So here's the existing catch basin that we have that then goes down under 2nd Street to bury that creek and currently holds the water. I know it's no secret here, this does hold water, after bringing rain events, and then for a couple of days afterwards, we can all drive by and see it. There's some water in this area. That is why it's in the floodplain and under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers, actually, being a blue stream is what they call it. But the proposed plan, and this is not, this has happened before throughout town where the culverts are extended and there's different ways to mitigate that. What they are proposing here is that existing catch basin and culvert to be extended west and southwest, and you can kind of see it S-ing around here through this alley or through this driveway, and then just directly off the pavement. So the pavement stops right here, and that'll be where the new inlet is. And this area here will be designated for if a stormwater basin is required, if some additional area to store it there. That is all stuff that we require before a building permit comes in. They have to get stormwater engineering calculations. This is often the first step in this kind of thing where the applicant has this under contract. They want to go through P&Z and council to see if the plan is approved, and if so, they can go down and pay to have the stormwater engineering calculations, all of that drawn up, finalized, and then in this case they'll come back for a final development plan at that point. But we did look at this with our engineering department and our site plan committee, and there's a couple options here. Our stormwater department, again, we don't design it for them. They may have to submit the plans, but there is room to the south here that is not planned to be utilized that can have a basin and on larger rain events to hold water and then drain it into back the basin, the existing 48-inch. Or this could be oversized and it could be considered underground detention storage. So a couple options there that have to be worked out at a later date. But the main thing that we wanted to know with the site plan is that there is the developer is aware of the floodplain and the requirement to fix that or mitigate that, I should say, and then that there is room available if they don't want to do underground on site. So again, those will all have to be finalized and before they get construction permits.
Sal, is the infrastructure underneath 2nd Street and on its way to Front Street and the river, is that large enough to carry all this additional, or?
Yeah, so I think the 48 inches is fine. It all, I think, depends on if there's areas, and again, I'm not a stormwater engineer, but as far as I understand it, it all depends on areas that it can retain during large events. So the problem here, I think, during really bad events, there is some times where obviously it overflows here and has probably caused some issues. This could almost be an opportunity to take care of that if extending the existing 48-inch, which I believe is fine. The problem would be is you're taking away the storage area. That water typically sits there and then drains into that 48-inch. So as long as that's mitigated by having some type of retention, I'm sure that'll be the case. Well, yeah, let us get through the PowerPoint and then you'll be able to come up first.
I'm sorry, I should have asked a question.
Okay. Yeah, Doug, we'll bring you up after. You'll get the chance to speak first afterwards. So.
And Sal,
Yep.
just since I see we have a large group here and everything, could you, as I understand the agenda, all that we're looking at tonight is the zoning change. We are not actually approving a development plan tonight. Is that accurate?
No, so this is an approval of the preliminary development plan. It's both.
Okay,
So
it is both.
yeah, it's just the planning and zoning. We'll look at the zoning change and the actual site plan that goes along with it. It goes to city council for the same thing, and then a resolution for the preliminary development plan. Later, it comes back for the final development plan, and that's when we show, okay, the stormwater has been handled, the plans have been finalized, it's surveyed to know exactly, here's the easements and all of that. But yes, the plan, unless it were to drastically change and they add units or take away parking, the plan would not be coming back before planning and zoning at this point.
That's what I want to clarify.
Yep.
Thank you.
And Sal, I have a question. Is there any chance that in the future this development may come over to the 3rd Street side as well?
Not, so,
Can I say something? I can't,
No.
with the masses, I can't understand the question.
okay, so we'll make sure everyone speaks into the microphone. So at this point, no, so since this is a planned development, if anything were to be built off 3rd Street, that would be considered a change to this plan, and we would have to re-notify neighbors, bring it back to this group and to city council. So no, there's no plans off of 3rd Street, and if they were to, we would have to basically start this process over.
Okay, thank you.
So this is just kind of, again, continuing it east, and you can see that there is the alley that does go all the way to the rear here. It is less than 150 feet, so that's why we do not require a turnaround, and 2nd Street does also act as a fire lane as well, and so they do have adequate fire service on all 360 is what we call it. Obviously, it doesn't turn around here, but the fire department did look at this during site plan, and Chief had no concerns. So this is the rendering that was submitted. Again, with the planned development, we do require some type of architectural rendering. We don't require the final set at this point, but what can be tied to these is saying a certain, we can require, that it has to be brick or, that kind of thing, and set height limitations. So this is what was submitted in the style that they want, and the applicant has said that it would be 2 stories, I believe, but they can verify that when they get up here. So I'll just wrap up and open it up to questions, but looking at the site plan and the surrounding area, staff is recommending approval of the development with a few conditions that I'll get to. When you look at the 2nd Street corridor and the surrounding property, you have apartments directly across the street. You got multifamily, duplexes right across 2nd Street, a mix of 2-family and single-family in the area, as well as very similar 2-story townhomes a block north. So there is a variety of uses, all single-family, 2-family, or all residential along the 2nd Street corridor. And as you get from High Street all the way to Olive, there's a variety of densities and uses. And this is technically considered single-family, just has the 0 lot lines. So we do not think it's out of character for the neighborhood if the site plan is built as submitted. And we are recommending approval. The conditions of approval that we are requesting to be placed on top is that no parking signs are placed along the alley fire lane to the rear to make sure it stays open for emergency services. Again, the stormwater calculations submitted meeting city detention requirements. That's a standard condition, but we want to make sure that, obviously with it being in the floodplain, that'll be something that is definitely required. A letter of ALOMA, a letter of map amendment from FEMA will be required to make sure that the floodplain is handled, and an Army Corps 404 permit must be submitted prior to groundbreaking. And then lastly, the final subdivision plat must be submitted showing the individual lots. As submitted here, it does show the individual units, but we need to know, are they going to go, are the property lines going to be all the way north-south? Is there going to be common ground to the rear? That's just something that'll have to be shown on a record plat before it can be recorded and individual lots can be sold off. So, that being said, I am available for questions.
Any other questions or comments by board members?
Of course, I always have questions.
Yeah.
Okay. The first phase was going to be the west section, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in that first phase, will that connecting drive to 2nd Street be completed?
It will be required because this first phase is longer than 150 feet, so
Right.
some type of turnaround will be required to be made during the first phase.
Next question is the second phase. If I read the fine print right, there's 7 buildings and 22 feet per building. That's 154 feet.
Right,
And-
but, so with a fire truck could pull down to 150 feet, stop, and the hose can still reach around.
But I thought the code says we can't have more than 150-foot deadhead drive?
This was, Chief,
I'm just
yeah,
asking that question because if you include the 12-foot distance from the building to the center, to the edge of the roadway that comes off a Second, it's actually 168 feet.
right. This was reviewed by Chief Frankenberg.
I'll talk to him about
Okay.
it.
And yeah, he said that given the Second Street and that this could be, a truck could stop at 150 feet and the hose could still reach, that it was adequate, according to him. So,
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, one more, I'm sorry. The drive over the top of that 48-inch pipe, will that be sufficient to sustain the, whatever the poundage rate, 68,000, I believe?
they'll have to, yeah. So during the infrastructure planning process and the construction plans, they'll have to show, the engineering that, they have, so weight capacity to
Concrete
over that.
pipe support that? Do you know?
I don't know, but they have to submit engineered plans that
Okay.
sign and sealed, so.
Okay. That's all I have, I think, for now.
Anyone else on the board?
Sal, I guess on the, that would be the south side of the building, south of Second Street, where the drive comes back all the way across the back side of the buildings, will there be a large retaining wall there to retain that hillside? And do you have any idea how tall that might be?
Yeah, that'll be a question for the applicant.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions or comments by board? All right, we will take questions from the audience. We will have Doug, your contractor, doing this development. If you would come up first, we have some questions I think we need answered. Just introduce yourself.
Speaking to the mic.
Yeah, up here. Sorry,
Doug Wilming, developer.
you can pull that over to you.
To answer one of your questions, we're actually, as of this last week, we're losing on the east side on the 7. We're actually losing one of those to the furthest to the right for ponding. So where that pipe comes underneath the road, I can add on to it to take the rainwater. But what we do by developing the entire thing is we raise the ponding, which there in turn raises up as it goes. So what we have to essentially do is, if you kind of imagine a moat, in the case of an extreme rain, the river coming up and flooding into that valley, from my understanding from the engineers, the amount of ponding that's currently there, we have to take that same, I guess, square footage and bring it around like a moat. It obviously won't be full of water all the time. It'll be grass, but in the instance, it'll fill to where that 7th building is. So that one can't fit anymore. That'll come around the building as a ponding
This is a retention area.
hole, retention area.
That solves the length of that drive, thank you.
Sure, yeah. And then I'm not 100% sure, we talked about extending the pipe there and then potentially, depending on where that pipe goes, the ponding area, tying it into, we discussed that. I don't know if there's any, any factual information of that, but potentially having 2 tie-ins, if it really got going and wanted to run, we'd have 2 inlets, or if one were to clog, the other would capture the ponding.
And you'll have a wall in back?
Yeah,
retaining wall?
back, I think it'll be somewhere in the ballpark of 10 feet. It'll be the concrete, 2 foot by 4 foot block walls with a guardrail and flower bed on top of it.
How tall did you say, Doug?
Go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Samantha. How tall did you say that wall would be?
I think as of right now, don't hold me to it, but somewhere in the ballpark of 10 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, because in order to get that road to come down and lay, ideally, to where it's usable,
That would be way to the far east, though.
Really, it would be roughly that entire, it's going to be the better part of that entire development.
Yeah, it's a pretty good hillside there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Samantha?
Question, yes. I wanted to know, could you speak a little bit about the size of the units and kind of who your target customer is and price point?
Sure. Well, we're not 100% sure what we want to do yet. I think what we want to do is rent, but they're going to be much higher end. They're going to be something more along the lines like you saw, like what Andy did down, on Front Street. Rents somewhere from like $1,500 to $1,800 a month. They'll be 1,768 square feet, 4 bed, 3 bath, 2-car garage, rear entrance, 2 car.
Wait.
Sorry, I said a 1-story garage, but
Yep.
yeah,
Sorry.
2-car garage.
We'll get everybody's questions and address the board. We're not going to go back and forth,
Single story, but 2-car
So
garage.
the single-story garage, but it's a 2-story unit.
Yeah,
So you said about 1,700 square feet?
1768 as of right now.
Okay.
We don't have the final plans drawn, but
And so all the units will be the same?
yep, identical.
Okay? Okay.
Any other questions?
One other quick question. Will they be sprinklered?
I'm sorry?
Will they be residential sprinklered?
That depends on what we come up with BFA, I guess. I think there's certain requirements I'm not 100% sure on as far as, I can't remember what we ran into in the sixplex. Do you remember what it was?
I don't think it's required if you have the appropriate fire
Probably not,
rating
but I'm
between the
just-
walls, but
It's a suggestion, I'm just asking.
yeah.
Sure.
Any other questions? Thank you. We'll get to them. Yeah,
Okay.
you may have to come back up, so don't leave.
Sure.
Okay. Come on up. He had his hand up first. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, my name's Keith Kinsel, and I live right there in that corner lot on 3rd Street, where it comes up and then zigzags over and goes up. Yeah, right there. I was curious, how far back is the development going to come to our properties? Because like at my area, it's at 33 feet, I think it says on that thing. And, the flood thing is at 15, so they're probably going to come in about 20 on the so is it going to be about, are we going to have the rock wall is going to come right up to our property line and stuff? Or is it going to be, we're going to have the 30-foot buffer zone like it says in the PR2 thing between higher density populated, higher density developments and lower density developments? Whether or not we'll have that 30-foot or not. And,
Sal, do you want
but
to?
I don't want to, I'd hate to have a drop off right at the edge of my yard, And also, as far as trees on our property, that's right at the edge. If they're going to be cutting back all the way, they're going to be killing our trees. Are we going to be responsible for the taking down of things like that, or is that going to be part of the development?
I think we can answer some of your questions, possibly.
So the buffer is set by the site plan, and so on here, it does show this area in between.
That's
but-
just concrete and asphalt back there.
Well, that concrete and asphalt stops here. That's 26 foot wide. This is not all concrete and asphalt. This is
Okay,
still,
that's
this
what-
is still, yeah, this is green space, green area. If they were to be removed, this is the time that this committee could recommend, certain buffering, screening, that kind of thing.
But there's none that you have to have.
Because according to this, it looks like you're going to have a decent,
Yeah.
what I think a decent amount of green space. So this is 26 foot wide, so you got, at its minimum, probably about 30 feet of green space, and then it gets even wider over here, so.
Sal, that brings up a point. If you go up to that next corner lot that gets to the real close back into the property line,
Right here?
nope, down further to the right. Up. Tom, I think you know where I'm talking about, don't you? The next corner on the first phase where the property line gets really close to the fire lane. Here? Right there, okay? If they're talking about a 26-foot fire lane and a 2-foot concrete wall, if you want to call it that, to support that, that is going to be very close to that property line, and we have to make sure that that 26-foot gets maintained there if there's going to be a retaining wall there too, and that gets really close to that property line at that corner where we don't have that green space or anything there anymore, that separation.
Correct, yeah, and there is an option, because this is the area where there's not any green space. If you wanted, I would recommend if we're going to require some screening, maybe a fence where there's not buffer area on top of that wall is, a possibility in here as well. But,
Okay,
yeah, it will have to be maintained. So this plan that has been submitted shows 26 feet, and they show it off of the property line. So that's what we are making a recommendation off. If they come back and resubmit that and it changes, then.
Okay.
You want to come on up?
How y'all doing?
Good.
My name's Neil Zeisman. I own the property at 210 Stafford. Okay, that'd be 210 Stafford, that'd be right there at the corner, Olive.
Is that the corner?
Huh? No, come on down here a little bit.
Olive side, olive.
That will be over top of it, right there. Okay, that's my house right there. All right, and there's a culvert that comes out on the backside of that home right there. And I have had water all the way up, halfway up my yard on bad storms. And I have no problem you building homes, that's fine, wonderful. But my concern is, I don't want my yard to turn into a retention pond, because the city bought pipe at one time to extend all the way down to Stumpy's property. And then they were going to do that and then just leave it there to let that as a retaining pond down there for catching water. Because you got to remember, you go all the way up Stafford, you hit 5th, go down 5th to High Street all the way down to Roberts on the west side of the factory. All that water drains down through that creek. And with the new construction going up there, there's that, well, it's a gravel parking lot up there now, but that's eventually all going to get paved over. So that's even more water that's going to come down. And I paid just to get my house out of the flood zone to get it surveyed, so I really don't want to find out that I'm back in that flood zone. My other concern is, all right, let's say the city goes ahead, puts the pipe goes all the way through, and the developer helps out with that too. He puts that pipe all the way through the property there. Now I got another concern. On the other side of Stafford and Roberts, you can see that creek right there in between those two homes there. But will that clog up there and go over 2nd? Because that's a horrendous amount. There goes that very first house at the bottom of the hill is Stafford and Roberts on the left, my left-hand side. They had water in their basement already. So my concern is, I'm not as concerned about that as much as I am with the water coming back up into my property.
Sal, you want to address the water issues?
Yeah, so they'll have to submit calculated by an engineer stormwater plans to verify that it will not increase runoff on any surrounding properties. So I mean, as they're working on it, that's, we'll verify that with whoever their engineer is.
Whenever the culverts down there are cleaned out, the city usually comes down there once in a while and they clean out all the debris and stuff that gets up against them. We usually don't have much of a flood in that lower area. But God forbid, you wouldn't believe what comes down through that thing sometimes. If that gets choked up, I'm hoping we have the same amount of room, because I don't want to, after it's there, find out, oops, every time we have a hard rain, I got a pond behind 10 feet away from my house.
Yep.
Okay, those are my concerns.
Yeah, and that'll get reviewed and verified to make sure it doesn't
Okay,
hurt neighboring properties, so.
and you'll let us know at the next meeting,
Well, if the plan changes enough and they need a new retention basin, or if they add units, and then they'll have to come back because it's a planned development. But if they're able to show, that they got, when they revised this, because they're just removing one out, and show that it's all down there, I mean.
Because I think that one gentleman I talked to back there, he said the pipe was still there as of about 5, 6 years ago, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. All the big concrete pipe that was there, purchased by the city to put on down through. I'm sure you guys used it on a different project, but it was.
Not us guys. Not us guys.
All right, but anyway, that's my concern.
Yeah, and I'm sure Sal can check with the street department and sewer to see what is going on with the runoff.
All right, thank you.
Yes, come on up.
My name is Marty Riggs, and this is my wife, Marcia, and we own the house on the corner at 2nd and Stafford.
202 Stafford.
202 Stafford, right
On
there.
the other side.
No, he had the, right there,
Right there.
right there. We have just some concerns. One is where you're talking about putting in the drive behind the buildings. You know, that is a former dump, and I would hope that the city would, you know, take the precautions of having that area tested, because I know when I mow and have cleaned up over there, there's always something working up out of the ground. So I would recommend that the city have that ground tested. There might be PCBs and everything else in there. Another concern we have is on our lot, there's about a 157-year-old pecan tree. And I don't know how close that's going to come to the property line, but like this other gentleman said, if you encroach, you know, on the tree roots, that tree might die. And I want to know, would the city or the contractor stand good if that tree dies?
Mark, you want to give the...
That would be the contractor's liability if he kills the tree.
Well, I would hate to lose a 157-year-old tree, because that makes the lot. It really does. That is a historical site also. We've got the 2-story smokehouse there behind that house. Another concern is that along that back ridge of where you're talking about building, my understanding from the Department of Conservation, that's a bat habitat, and you're not supposed to be messing with that. So I don't know if the construction would interfere with
Who in the
that.
Conservation Department told you that?
What's that?
Who told you that?
Well, I believe Mr. Gildehouse mentioned that when he was planning on doing something there. What else?
There is an Indiana bat in this area that I think the Army Corps also looks at. So when you get an Army Corps permit, the EPA, that covers all of that to make sure it's all clean and you're not doing any construction during an endangered species. I believe after that just means any trees that are cleared have to be done after October 1st.
Yeah.
Because they move on. I believe so. But yeah, the Army Corps looks at, I mean, they cover all of that. When you get a 404 permit, that's pretty much
Covered.
all encompassing.
Another concern is when you make the drive off of Stafford Street, will there be a retaining wall on our property line? Because that's a pretty good little knoll there.
It doesn't show it on here, but that would be the applicant. That'd be a question for the applicant because it doesn't show it on here.
We'll find that out.
I'm just wondering how close the construction and the excavation is going to come to the property lines. I mean, probably right up to it. But those are our concerns. You got anything else? Okay.
That house is on the National Register of Historic Places, and that pecan tree has been there since the house. So when he builds, and we're up on a knoll, so that kind of gradually goes down into that property. I would want some assurance that they wouldn't cut too far back into that hillside, it's not really a hill, but that knoll, to get that one townhouse in there, because, you know, you can't get we have a lot of historic people that
history people that come over and they tell us about that pecan tree and they come and pick the pecans. Oh, it's a northern pecan tree, whatever. But I wouldn't want that. It just goes with that, with our house on the National Registry, and I'd want them to just not encroach on the taproot of that tree. It's up on the property, but it's a big old tree. And it would be thousands of dollars to cut that thing down if it died. So just, that's my concern. We have that little chunk of property, and it's a historic landmark, and I just want them to treat it as such when they build.
How old is that?
On the National Registry, it said that taxes were taken on that house for the first time in 1868, but it was there before that. That's just when it first came on the tax. And we restored it lovingly to keep it intact and to, you know, adhere to all the regulations for it to be a historical landmark. So the integrity of it, I would like the integrity of it just to stay. And it's just up by itself there, so I don't object to the townhouses. I think they would be an asset to the community. Just want respect for my property when they do that.
To further answer your question, depending on what paperwork you get your hands on,
Or what person you talk to.
you know, it was either built in 1852 or 1858. But like she said, they didn't start keeping records as far as taxes and things until later on. But,
Sandy, you know the first print, that print they have from 1869, it was on there. It was already there when they surveyed that land.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Petra Haynes. My husband and I live on the corner of Olive and Third. And our property, we share a property line with the Stumpy property on the 3rd Street side. Some of the previous speakers have addressed some of the issues I'm interested and concerned about. I guess one of my main concerns is the fact that the project proposes 18 structures on what is a fairly small area. And given the fact that those of us who live in that area know how much trouble we have with the storm sewers already with runoff and the amount of water that comes down now with some of the really extreme storms we tend to have, the system already can barely handle, if that, the amount of water, the amount of runoff that's already coming down. I know, you know, that's already sort of been mentioned, but I want to reiterate that I think that that's really a concern when you're adding so much more runoff from these, you know, large structures. You already mentioned that the wetlands would be impacted, if I understand that correctly. I am assuming that there is a plan for mediation, or there will be a plan for mediation, I think.
So as I understand, the Army Corps requires some type of remediation plan to be submitted to get your permit.
Okay, and so if so, since we know the wetlands are impacted, will the Stormwater Committee have a say in that process?
No, not locally. That is a federal organization. So they may reach out to our engineering department on recommendations, because I know you can remediate in the general area. So they may say, you know, find somewhere in this basin and enhance it. But it's, again, that'll be up to the Army Corps, and they may consult with our engineer, but, you know, I don't know for sure.
Okay. So with respect to the bats that had just come up, and I couldn't, Sal, really hear what you were saying, but there are, in fact, really bats there. One of our neighbors had quite a bat problem when they moved into the home they live in, and I've heard this also from Ralph Guildhouse as well as other neighbors, that, you know, there are definitely bats in that vicinity. It's a roosting and, you know, nesting place. And so, I'm wondering if there would be an environmental assessment required to see if those are rare and endangered bat species. I know that there are brown bats, which are the larger, not so cute bats. I don't know if they also have, the kind of the little ones that, like little white ones that we know are protected for sure, but they are definitely bats there, so that is absolutely a fact. And I guess my other concerns had already been spoken to, so thank you for taking my questions.
Sure.
So does the Army Corps of Engineer also look at the bats?
Yes, so that's all,
All of that, right?
because, yeah, they don't want to approve something not knowing that a different department hasn't looked at it, so the environmental is all the same. Because, and again, this is the first I've heard about any bats, so I don't know for sure. I know from other construction projects we've had in this region, basically the biggest thing is there's a certain date you cannot remove trees. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's like after October 1st, they assume the bats move on, and then you can then get a permit to remove the trees.
Well, they ran into that down along the riverfront when we were building the bridge.
Okay, there you go. All right. I think it's the Indiana brown bat, I think. I can't remember for sure.
My name is Ralph Gildhouse, Remax Today. I have represented the seller on this property. And what I was told by the Army Corps of Engineers that actually I was looking at the one parcel to build a house, my personal residence, and a little pond and stuff. When meeting with him, he indicated that that was a bat habitat, and exactly what you said. I think from October to March, somewhere in that time frame, you could not disturb that area. However, after that, it was totally fine to remove the trees, and apparently they find their sanctuary someplace else, is what he reiterated to. So, but to remark on that, the development here, this is by far the nicest proposal that we've experienced in the years of marketing the property. There was some, I'm glad we didn't have to bring to the planning and zoning. So for what it's worth, that doesn't make any difference on the final approval, but the use of the property in the downtown area and the need for the housing, for this type of housing, I think it warrants that type of development, and as long as he follows the guidelines, I would hope that it would be approved.
And we do have a letter from
Yes, I think
Ruth Stumpy Tuffley?
Yeah, it was emailed to me, and I printed it out.
Oh,
There
okay.
I received 2 letters this morning. I printed them all out for you, some comments from the neighbors. And again, just to reiterate, so we will, anytime you clear more than an acre, we require a land disturbance permit from the Department of Natural Resources. And on that, you mark, is it a floodplain, is it a wetland? And if you hit yes, with it is, then that's when DNR says, okay, go get your Army Corps 404 permit. And so there's a lot of checklists, there's a lot of oversight there, even on the state level, that they just come back to us at the end. So, the bats, if there's environmental concern, all that is done by the applicant with DNR, with their own engineers, and they bring back the approvals to us before then we give them the clearance to do any land disturbance.
So that'll just automatically be protected, or that'll just be part of this development?
Yes.
The 4-4 plan or whatever it is. Right.
Anybody else that would like to speak in the audience? Come on up, please. Oh, don't be.
Okay, I am. My name is Juliana Benedict, and I live at the corner of 2nd and Olive. It's hard for me to, it's that how,
All right, I'm gonna get the.
it doesn't matter, right there at the corner of 2nd and Olive. And I have several concerns. I'm going to try not to be offensive. Density. The shoe factory just down the block is already going to really expand the traffic, the everything, as you know, that comes with that. I mean, that is already super high density. I was shocked that there were 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, whatever, the things that were approved for that I was kind of blown away at that density, and then to have this on top of it, 18 and now 17 units. I don't know how this process really works. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, but it sounds like we're having to rezone without even knowing really what's going to be there. Or it's already changed in the few days. We only got these letters a few days ago, and it's already changed from 3-story to 2-story. I don't really understand that it's written in stone that all that area that's marked out, the second, third phase or whatever it is, what is going to happen to that? You say it's just going to stay the way it is? It's not going to be developed back behind those houses on Olive or the ones that go up? There's not going to be a road that goes through. What is in the future, or can we even know that? Do we just have to approve this blindly without knowing the further density? This gives me a lot of concern. All that area behind the homes there, that's not going to be developed?
No, so this is what's submitted, and this is what's being requested. If they were to request to develop on 3rd Street, they would have to submit a plan, and we have to notify neighbors again, just like we are right now. So this is what's been submitted, and that's what we're reviewing tonight. So as far as I can tell you, no.
So that's not being
nothing
automatically
happening on 3rd Street.
rezoned to our, whatever this is, what are we trying to get it rezoned to? Our
PDR. So technically, this is part of it, but they could cut that off and keep this R2 overlay if they wanted to. They can make it PDR, but just because it's zoned PDR doesn't mean it's going to get developed. It has to be planned to be developed.
So what's on the plan?
Yeah, that's what I'm confused. Right now, we're just kind of doing this blindly, saying,
Well,
sure,
yeah,
go ahead and build these 18 units, and maybe later we'll come back and build back there some more.
No, it's not what we're saying at all. This is what's being submitted. This is what has been submitted and what staff has made recommendations on. Anything that's not shown on here cannot be built. If they want anything more, they have to submit a new plan. So this is what's being requested.
If they make any changes,
Okay,
Not
and then
on
we
there.
can come, we would come back in and have the opportunity.
Right, this is blank right now, so
Okay.
it stays that way.
Okay.
Until he comes back.
Okay.
And then
And that is written in stone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if
Okay.
this were to be approved, the plan, well, and again, this is a preliminary plan, and then they come back with a final plan, at the end at City Council. But when council votes on the final plan, that plan is put in with the ordinance and recorded at the recorder of deeds.
Okay.
And so it is set in stone on
All right.
paper at the county.
Okay, and we can safely say that the garages for these 17 units now are sufficient for this many people for that little street.
And I apologize, yes, they are 2-car garages, which is what we require, two parking spaces for a single family, and that is what they are there. The only reason I point that out, and I made that confusing, I apologize, I just wanted to point out that the garages are single story in the
Right,
back.
I understand that now, but I'm
Yes.
still saying, between the shoe factory and these 17 houses that are going in this little tiny space, there's going to be a lot of traffic, a lot of cars, and I'm just saying it's super high density for that small area. It just is. And I don't understand why we're rushing this through so fast without giving everybody an opportunity, a little bit longer opportunity to digest it and discuss it amongst the neighbors even. So that density, when I consider it already over capacity with the shoe factory, the traffic, and this being a historic, nice, calm, historic area that we all moved there for that area. I still feel like we may just be getting part of the picture. I know, I like your assurances, but I'm, again, concerned about letting the camel's nose in the tent here and what the future is going to bring. It certainly changes the feeling of this historic district, and I'm kind of surprised that these row houses are being allowed to be built there. And to say that they're going to be high rent, is that a guarantee that they're going to be high rent? Or will they be part of the affordable housing? This has nothing to do with the affordable housing, the AFFH, right?
No,
It doesn't? This
No.
has nothing, you can assure me this has nothing to do with the AFFH?
no. No, I mean, it's,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
yeah, it's, I mean,
Okay.
they have not submitted any plans to have any subsidies, any government subsidies, any low-income, anyone can rent out a property that they own.
Right.
So we look at.
These are not being built with that in mind. I mean, this is not, has Washington addressed that AFFH? I mean, or is it something that,
We cannot, it's illegal to say we cannot not allow it. I mean,
Right.
rentals are rentals. If you own a piece of property, you can rent it out. He can sell these to individual owners like other townhomes, or he can rent them. We make recommendations based on the site plan and the use and the density, not if this, we can't say this has to be renter owned or it has to be a certain price. That would be illegal.
right? Oh, well, not according to the FFH. They do have to be a certain price, but I won't go there. But, I mean, they do. They have to be affordable.
Well, I meant we can't set a minimum. We can't say, no, it needs to be high end is what I meant by that.
Okay, that I know you can't say.
Yes.
But that's what I'm concerned about, that you can't say that. Okay, so we now know that they're going to be attached, right?
Yes.
So it's going to be like row houses, basically,
Yeah, townhomes, yes.
but with a brick front?
Correct.
Do we know that?
Correct.
You have that picture?
But the picture you said is obsolete.
Well, it's a 2-story instead of a 3-story, but I think
And
it's
it's
the same
siding on
style.
the sides on that.
Well, there would be sides, except on.
That's what I'm saying. So now it's not going to be sides, they're going to be attached with a brick front.
Right.
Oh. 17 of them. Does it really have to be 17 in that small area?
I can't
mean-
answer that.
Sal, do you know about how many duplexes could fit there?
Well, duplexes, since we can't have shared walls, you can only have one shared wall, and you need to have 12,000 square feet.
Approximately.
2 acres. Well, you would have to take out every third of these.
That's all right.
So, yeah, maybe if you're counting individual duplexes, maybe 12. I don't know. It depends on how wide they were, if they were shotgun style.
So now we're going to have stop signs and stoplights on 2nd Street, just letting you know, it's already a problem, traffic. And I just can't even conceive of what it's going to be like in that little calm, serene, peaceful part of Washington. I think it's really sad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, please come on up.
Hi, my name's Tim Ridgway. I live on Olive Street, and my property backs up to the undeveloped part of the proposal. 2 things. First, my wife would kill me if I didn't ask if there were planned stop signs on 2nd Street, or is there another process that goes into that?
There is not another stop sign proposed here.
Okay.
And that would be the street department. And we have a board, that traffic board, that looks at and recommends.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you can go to that traffic committee. MoDOT and the city is there, and it's what, the first Monday? First Monday?
Of the
But
month.
they're the ones that decide where stop signs go.
Okay. So first Monday of every month?
Yeah.
First Friday.
Friday,
First
yeah.
Friday of every month.
Okay. Okay. I
Call if you know, it has to get developed first before they're going to start.
sure. Right. Right.
You just call up here, but it's the first Friday of every month at
Okay.
8 o'clock.
Okay. Obviously, we've got I don't want to say a concerned community, but a community that loved that area. So I'm speaking particularly for my family. I've got 3 young children. That's important. The second thing is, if you go back to the bigger picture, so the undeveloped area, will there be any development there, or will it stand as it sits presently?
It sits like it is now because it's not on this plan.
Okay.
If he wants to develop it, he would have to come back.
Sure. Yeah, I caught that. So my house is built up, and it sits on a 10-foot retaining wall, the yard. And so I guess the concern that I have is there's a lot of water that flows across 3rd Street and down into that ravine, and it also passes through that plot there and down. So the development that is on the east side is, where will that water channel?
I can't answer that at this time. I mean, they have the pipe here, they have to submit final development plans if they're going to change any of this.
I'm talking about right there, that flow right there. There was a wall that was discussed. Is that wall going to keep that from flowing through?
The applicant will have to answer that.
Well, I can't see that. He can keep water back. He can't keep more water. I mean, he has to retain water to come down here somewhere and retain water. You know, you have to look at the overall, you know, how it sets up after they do all the engineering on the land.
Okay.
And they have options. Like, I mean, anything from underground to the retention ponds, you know, low spots.
Okay.
Things like
that. And that will come later as part of this project, is if there's a concern of water developing there from the people that live there currently, and if that erodes my wall, then my entire yard goes with it. So what would that process be to ensure what discussions, I guess, or what assurances that water will flow through?
I mean, we have a city code that requires that it meets all those requirements, and so they have to submit that, and our city engineers will review it to verify it.
And there's no requirements there now because it's undeveloped. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so the water can just pool up there however much it wants until somebody develops that, then they have to pass.
Because right now it's just an existing situation.
Right, okay. I still don't fully understand, but I'll go with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on up, come on up.
Can you read the letters that were sent by the other residents?
Yes, we have them.
No, but I would like to hear them.
This is from Ruth Stumpy. Is it TOEFL? Yeah. Okay. Dear Washington friends, thank you for the opportunity to enthusiastically endorse the West 2nd Street rezoning and development. While I am unable to attend your meeting in person because of my husband's health condition, I appreciate your gracious acceptance and reading of this letter. This land has been in our Stumpy family for 5 generations. Owners are the 5 grandchildren of the late Dorothy and Clarence Stumpy, and I am trustee for the 2 youngest grandchildren. Since my mother's passing 8 years ago, we are trying to sell a property to settle her estate. We are pleased with this proposal because it demonstrates vibrant economic growth and high-quality housing for Washington. Several interested buyers have expressed interest in this 2nd Street land in the past, including a proposal for multiple storage units. By far, the current development being proposed is the most aesthetically pleasing and is also substantial investment for the neighborhood. The design of the beautiful large north-facing bay windows and the red brick facade are in a contemporary design. My great-grandfather, Frank Stumpy, is surely smiling to see the use of this brick development on this land. Beginning in 1862, when Washington was known for its brick-making industry, he received high acclaim for reportedly making 10 million bricks. Please know of our continuing investment in Washington. I am a lifetime member of the Washington Historic Society and have several large donations pending with the Historical Society and the fire department's fire etiquettes. Thank you for supporting this rezoning development. Anybody else want to read the other one? Okay.
Okay. Then the next letter is from Jim Armistead via email to Sal Maniaci. Sal, per our conversation last Thursday, I informed you that I had a prior commitment on Monday, September 14th, and will not be able to attend the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that evening. As a recipient of your Stumpy property rezoning letter, I'd like to offer my written comments. I could not find an email address for the commission on the city website and trust that you will forward this to the appropriate members in a timely manner. First, I would like to offer some input on the process itself. The letter is dated 9/4. We received it on 9/8 due to the holiday. That gives us 6 days to look at the information and formulate an opinion. This is an inadequate amount of time to rearrange busy schedules in order to attend the meeting. The developer has most likely been working on this for weeks or months, and the city has known about it likely as long. Why don't those impacted by development get a reasonable length of time also? The proposal will be presented on the 14th, so we'll get more information, hopefully. Then we'll have to formulate our input quickly that night, and it could be even be voted on the same night. Doesn't seem quite fair to those affected by a new development, especially since most of us aren't familiar with the process. Then your letter goes on to set the rezoning on the agenda for the council meeting the following week. Gives one the impression that someone already thinks this will pass the Planning and Zoning Commission regardless of any adjacent property owner opposition. Details of this project seem to be in flux and not set. The plans that were sent out indicate 3-story development, and I understand now that it may be 2-story. Pretty significant change in a few days. I Googled the name on the plans and learned that the board approved rezoning another piece of property for the same developer February 15, 2019. In the newspaper article, it stated 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath, and his quote says, well, it will definitely be at least 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Maybe proposals shouldn't be put on agendas until the required studies are completed and reviewed by staff, as well as a sealed plan provided. My comments on the rezoning request are as follows. I have lived in the same house on 2nd Street for 35 years this year and am very familiar with the neighborhood and the Stumpy property. The general character of the block bounded by 2nd, 3rd, Stafford, and Olive, as well as most of the adjacent blocks in the R2 overlay area, are single-family with a few two-family that have been added in recent years. With a few exceptions, these properties have been well-maintained and many even upgraded over the years, enhancing the Stafford Olive Historic District. This is a very vibrant part of town where people care about their property and each other. The Stumpy property is one of the properties that has not been adequately maintained over the years and is a pest and mosquito haven, so a development would be welcome, but not the one proposed in the letter. Number 1, it seems to me that the R2 overlay district, the current zoning, was established specifically for land like the Stumpy property. The city development plan for R2 states protect and preserve single-family areas while allowing more density with two-family units. An example of the two-family units would be right across the street from this property down to Olive. So the existing R2 zoning allows for more density than single-family, yet still fits in with the nearby existing structures. R2 overlay is the appropriate zoning for this property. 2, this site is different than the shoe factory in that there are no constraints like reuse of existing structures. This is undeveloped land with no constraints that I am aware of that would keep a developer from building the maximum allowed number of single or two-family units under R2 zoning. 3, the drawing that was sent out is conceptual and not a sealed drawing, so we don't know for sure if this can even be built. 4, the plan illustrates 18 connected, narrow, 22-foot row houses. This does not in any way fit with the character of the neighborhood. 5, 18 units is excessive. With the approval of the shoe factory development, we do not need any more density in this area. It has been reported that there are parking concerns with the density of that project. Under Section 400.115G3A of the Zoning Code for Planned Development, the density of residential development shall be consistent with the intent of the original underlying residential district, which is R2 or compatible with nearby area. So, even if the Commission and Council deem this development good for Washington and this neighborhood, the density should be limited to that of R2, as single and two-family are the overwhelming majority of the nearby area. Although the project boundaries are not identified, I'd estimate about 1.5 acres, which would only allow 5 to 6 two-family units. 6, there are large areas on the plan that do not appear to be within the project boundaries, especially a piece fronted on 3rd Street. Since there is no development plan for this space, they should be removed from consideration for rezoning. 7, one of the intents and purposes of PDR zoning is to promote a more desirable community environment. Cramming a high density in row houses in an established single-family area does not, in my opinion, meet that criteria. 8, since I can't be at the meeting, I'll ask in case it is not covered in the presentation. Has the applicant had an independent professional do a traffic study as well as determine the adequacy of existing utilities? This should be required before vote, especially in light of the new development at the shoe factory and the aging infrastructure that was designed for single family. Also, the plans do not address how runoff will be handled. There is already significant flooding on Second Street during storm events. In summary, I believe the existing zoning is proper for this property and already allows for more density than single-family. The proposed development does not enhance community environment. Respectfully submitted, Jim Armistead, 412 West 2nd Street.
Thank you. Any other questions? Come on up.
Sorry, just one final.
Yeah, you have to come up.
I just don't know why. I don't understand why these questions don't have to be answered in advance of voting. Why does this have to be changed before the developer, before any of these questions have even been answered?
What questions?
These questions, all these questions that were just raised in the Armisteds about, there were those 5 or 6 or whatever questions, I don't remember how many there were that you just read. How can this all be decided before any of these questions are even answered?
We answered some of these on here. We don't do sealed drawings up front because it costs so much money to have that done. So we look at his plans and then he will go and get a sketch and have it exactly the way it's supposed to be according to our meetings.
But there were, I can't even remember all the questions that the Armisteds mentioned, but there were some very valid points there.
Yes.
And I'm kind of swimming in details here, and but I just remember that I thought as that was being read, I don't feel like those questions were yet answered, and this is being kind of rushed through.
The R2 versus the other zone.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that was, yes.
Yes. I don't know if R2, and Sal can answer this because he's the professional. R2 and single-family attached.
Two different things.
Yes.
So R2 in the overlay district allows for 1 and 2 family, and a 2 family in the sense that it is a 2-family structure, 1 unit on top, 1 unit on bottom, an A and a B. A single family attached is a duplex where they have a shared wall with no setbacks in between. R2 still requires 6-foot side setbacks in between houses.
Okay.
So,
But what is this going to be? Then this has changed? I'm sorry, you guys, if I'm taking your time, but
No. It's a planned unit. So when we develop some things, this is the best way to do it for us because we can see what's going to be there exactly. R2, he wouldn't have to come in and do anything except meet some specifications that Sal just said. So he could
proposed would
build.
work under the existing zone district.
But even if it were duplexes like what's across the street on Second Street, that's better. That's not that super high density turning into rental property type buildings.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be permitted under R2 either. You can't have a shared wall under R2. These are going to have shared walls. That's why it requires the rezoning.
But the other piece of the planned development is when there is a property like this that, I mean, it is unique. There are some water issues, there's other issues that go with this property. By developing it as a planned unit development, the developer can be a little bit more creative and not have to just bulldoze the entire property, and you see a ton of green space on that plan. That wouldn't necessarily work with this type of property with a different type of zoning. They may have to get rid of bat habitats and other things that they may not need to do with this type of zoning.
And I've got a bridge to sell you.
Well, I'm just telling you that's the philosophy.
I know,
behind
but I'm
the
just
zone.
saying, we know what this.
I'm not here to argue with you.
I know. I just know that
benefits.
this, I know what this is going to lead to.
Right. The other benefit to this type of zoning is that if they just wanted to come in as R2, they could build anything they want and bulldoze the property, and neighbors would have no say-so about it.
But R2 would be single homes.
Not necessarily. That's what they're saying, not necessarily.
You could have 2.
Build a bunch of 2-family homes.
2 family.
That's preferable.
Okay, well, at any rate, I'm
Okay, all right,
I'm just trying
I
to
know.
explain to you the different kind of zoning to answer your questions. That's
I think we're jumping into this blindly, and thank you. Thank you. I need help here.
I was excited, actually, when I got my letter and I saw this.
Me too.
Because I thought this was very attractive. I thought this would be great for the community. And coming and hearing that it's 2-story in rental, totally different, totally different. We have apartments across the street rental, and nobody mentioned that, but that's kind of high density. Now I know people that live up there, there's no problem with that, okay? But we have that. And then we have a shoe factory down the street. It's a lot of rentals.
And you know they're going to get rid of the habitat anyway. So
Well,
that's, we know that,
Well,
you
and
keep saying that that's the benefit to this.
I have a
but they-
big investment on that street, and I'm very proud of that little house. It had a very bad reputation, and we came in,
I love
my
it
daughter
too.
and I cleaned it all up. And she loves it.
But I don't think,
And I don't want to be bulldozed out, so to speak. You know, I don't
Mhm.
want my land cut out and have tons of renters, because we like it there. That neighborhood is
I know,
great.
it's so sad, this is so sad, but I think that using the argument that it's preserving the habitat, I mean, that this zoning.
If-
We're-
Maybe, okay, time out. Let the developer come back up and answer.
Yes.
I thought it would be.
Just wait a
more
second.
like Mr. Understall's
Yeah, it's
town
not.
in town.
Yes,
Wait.
that's what I think too.
We'll get some answers if you want to sit back down.
Thank you,
I'm
okay,
just-
all right.
I'm disappointed that I see one thing in the mail and I come and hear another. I thought it would be like Mr. Understall, who developed those townhouses and their own. And I know a lot of people that live in there and they absolutely love it. And I really was looking forward to thinking that's what was coming, but now.
That's literally
You, come, Doug, if you would. Doug, if you could come up.
Go to the mic.
That's,
You can address us, Doug. You
Okay.
can address us.
it's hard to, full sets of prints are very expensive. I mean, for me to get a full set of prints for this building, call it $10,000. To come here tonight, I'm going to spend $10,000 to get all this engineering done, and then say it doesn't go through. Well, the engineer doesn't give me my money back. So what I sent into the city, that 3-story building that everybody's getting hung up on, that's very similar to what it's going to look like. I'm literally I'm shooting for as similar to Andy Understall's buildings as I can. The 2-story versus 3-story thing, I searched and searched and searched online for what had in my head, and I just couldn't find it. But that, and with what Andy's got going on, that's very similar. Reddish bricks to kind of match your home. You know, that same type of brick and stone. Black windows, black handrails, you know. And then when you talk about rentals, when you think about rentals, you think about rentals in the typical sense. I mean, these are $1,500, $1,800 rentals. I mean, these are going to be 55 and older couples that children have moved out of home and they're going to move downtown to be close to the riverfront and the restaurants, and they're going to, you know, I mean, maybe I'm way off and it's not going to happen, and I will end up having to sell them. You know, selling the units is the exit strategy. I'd like to rent them. It's this whole thing is me and my wife, 2 kids, trying to make a life. That's it. There's no corporate HRs at home with the baby right now. There's no we're after the backfield, or I'm trying to get my units in front and rent them to older people. I can't afford people to not make their rent.
Yep.
I need 55, 65-year-old couples that children have moved on. Now they're downsizing to be downtown or whatever, but they still want the bedrooms for when their family comes to visit. I can't afford people not paying rent. They'll all be gone. The bank will want them.
The retaining wall coming off of, was it Stafford? He mentioned that, would there be a retaining wall on that side for the driveway?
I mean, there's a good chance probably on both sides.
Do you know?
You know, like on their side, up there, above there, it'd probably be 1 brick high. And the biggest thing is I want to take as little of the back side of that property as I can. I don't want to lose those trees any more than the people that currently live there do. You know, I don't want to look at the back of their house. They don't want to look at the back of my unit. I want that buffer, that field. I'll probably, I mean, if you draw a straight line over, I mean, I'll probably never even, I'm going to need to take some dirt from there, obviously, to get those buildings in there and bring it around the corner, but that top field probably never get touched. That corner, that triangle, probably never get touched. Where the road comes in and meets that historic home, I mean, I'm going to do everything I can to make it look good. Put a flower bed and make it, you know, make it flow together nicely.
Mm-hmm. And the pecan tree?
I mean, one thing I can't guarantee anything, of course. She left. No.
We got to wait. We can't have questions just shouting out.
They're on slab. So on that closest unit to the pecan tree, depending on how the grade lays exactly, maximum, if I bring the top of my foundation, the very top where my wood starts, the most it's going to be in the ground is 30 inches. That's probably not going to happen because those first, say the first one's going to be up high as I can so that the next one step until I hit the floodplain. When I hit the floodplain, it'll level out for the Loma, of course. So in theory, where that is now, where the dirt is now, I mean, we may be only talking about 1.5 feet, 2 feet into the ground. Now, I can't guarantee that something's not going to get hit I don't want the tree to die either. But we're not digging a 9-foot basement in there. And I mean, in worst case scenario, 30 inches of a 2-foot trench will come on one side of that. And I'm with them. I don't want the tree to die either.
Can you speak a little bit more? You talked about this a little bit, but can you talk about your plans for the green space or lack thereof?
The green space?
We see where your buildings are. We see there's a ton of space that looks green.
Yeah.
What's the plan?
I want to keep as much as I can. To disturb the green space costs money. I want to leave as much as I can, and of course those trees, there's big mature timbers in there. I don't want to mess with those. I want them to stay there. And I mean, it's just going to be better, So I want to take as little of it as I possibly can. And as of this point, I can't say whether it's 40 feet, 60 feet, whatever. All I can say is I want to keep as many, all the way around, 360 degrees. I want to keep as many mature trees as I can. I want to move as little dirt as I can. I really want, like, from the road, 80 feet, 100 feet, or less. And to answer a couple of the water questions, the water that's going to come off that hill whenever we build that building, it's going to slope, like next to his house there, it'll get sloped into that ponding area. And I've been curious to who lived there because there's going to come a point to where we're going to have to mesh yards, and to make it ideal, there might get some dirt on your property and stuff, but the end result will be hopefully a flawless combination of the two lots. And same way on the other side. I'm not about just throw a retaining wall in there. I want everything to be maintainable, mowable, look like it was meant to be there. And I want to take as little of the green space as I can. But I can't give you an answer on where that line is.
John has a question.
Looking at the grade numbers, where that ridge is behind Phase 2, you're looking at 531 elevation down to 2nd Street at a 512 elevation.
Right.
So you've got about 18 feet of cut that you're going to have to make back into that hillside. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So your plan is if you're going to drop one of the units on that east side, your plan then is to have those all on the same grade on the east side?
No, those will...
Stair step also?
Wherever I can stair step, I will stair step. Okay. Wherever... Basically, probably what it'll probably do is it'll stair step to the floodplain, 2 feet above 500, and then it'll plane out straight, flat.
Okay. And then on the west side, where the street ties into Stafford, there's quite a bit of elevation change there also.
Yeah.
So... Sal, do you know, does that meet our grade requirement on that west side? Have we looked at that?
No, I could not tell you off the top of my head. We didn't know about the retaining walls until
I
tonight as
understand
well.
that,
So
but that's,
yeah.
I mean, there's 20 feet, the way it looks, 30 feet difference there, so. and we
In
have
elevation.
10%.
We have 10% grade in the city, so I just didn't know if that had been looked at or not yet. And I guess my only concern after hearing everything tonight too and seeing what we have here and all the questions is I would like to see a revised plat with, since you're cutting off another building and talking about this moat or whatever you want to call it around that east side, how that would kind of lay in there a little bit before I would ever approve anything here. I think there's too many unanswered questions yet. And we don't have enough information here, I don't think, to make an informed decision.
I would say, I mean, I've got something on my phone if you wanted to see it right now.
No, we can do it in another meeting.
Yeah, because it would, I mean, I'm pulling it up. There is plan amendment, and I think removing the unit, I mean, is a significant enough change.
See, and then-
Stormwater, which is fine. We just have to.
Sure.
Submit again, because there's a plan amendment section in here as well.
See, with the losing the unit, we're spending a lot of time, really the biggest amount of time right now is the rainwater. There's really, as far as building goes, there's really no other problem. Let's go, let's start, you know? But the ponding and the rainwater is where they're at, but it doesn't change other than a moat on the back side of that, which I probably shouldn't call it a moat. All it is a lower elevation for as the water rises, instead of rising up into his house, it starts to rise and then it's relieved over here. So the square footage of volume current is what'll come around.
So
the side.
looking at the topographical lines there, it drops off from that 532 right behind the east development and drops off to the east significantly there. So this area that you're talking about would come around behind that eastern development?
Mm-hmm.
So you would cut into that hillside
Yes.
behind the retaining wall?
Yes, just strictly for ponding. So
Okay.
there'll be like a height, there'll be an elevation to where it doesn't have to be all the way down here
Understand.
where it is. So wherever that height is where I'll have to start it, and it'll have to maintain that height.
So you mentioned you may have to come into the property owner's side yard there along the far eastern edge of the property line
Yeah,
in order to get that swale in there for you to get the elevation, to get that water?
more so just blending.
I understand, but it's still something that you're going to be
Yeah,
affecting that area.
yeah, because it'll pond, it'll come up, say that it can't handle it, it'll start to pond, it'll get that relief, so instead of continuing up the creek and flooding everybody's house, it'll pond, hit that relief, and then as of current, I guess in the extreme case, it'll run back on Second Street as it currently does.
Right, that's what it looks like from the lines, that's probably what happens.
Sure.
That'd be just like an overflow.
It's like an overflow. It's instead of running up into his basement, it's can't get to his house because it's exiting towards the creek. So in theory, it shouldn't be any worse than it currently is.
In theory.
In theory.
Well, and in calculations.
I get it, you know, and I know there's safeguards
Wait a
for all
second.
that, okay? But I just don't have a warm fuzzy feeling about this because of some of the unanswered questions. I mean, we've
John.
seen other PDRs come in here and they've been more planned, I guess, than what this is.
Finalized, yeah.
Finalized,
So-
that's the right term for it, and I just don't have that warm fuzzy feeling with this.
Yeah.
And John, I have some of the same concerns that you have. My problem, I know he's got it all in his head.
Right.
But nobody here can review that black on white.
Correct.
Right.
And you can't affix that to an ordinance and say, well, we know what he's talking about, but we don't have it. So my suggestion to you all tonight, and keep in mind, and for the public, these are two different things. There's the rezoning, and then there's the approval of this plan. Those are two different things. I think there may be enough information tonight that you could make a decision on whether to rezone it or not, but I don't think you have enough information that meets the code requirements to vote on whether or not to approve the preliminary development.
Sure.
And that's why.
Yeah,
I
they're
asked the
working on
question
that
in the
now.
Beginning as to whether, what we were here to do, because the agenda seems
Yeah,
to indicate that we're just here for the zoning, and I agree with everybody else. I'm not sure that this is the normal plan that we would receive. It's
Right.
not the level of detail. I mean, I completely understand the economics and wanting to move forward and all of that, but we also have to do our due diligence and make sure that we
And
know what we're voting on.
And this process contemplates two different parts, the rezoning and the development plan.
Absolutely.
And the idea in part was you can come up here and decide whether or not you're going to get the rezoning before you decide to plunk, as you say, $10,000 into developing a set of plans.
Sure.
So you know whether or not you're going to get your rezoning or not. Now you got to work on your plans that meet the requirements.
Right.
But I don't think this part is there.
Right. Is that what council's for, the next meeting?
No.
It's
No.
not?
Plan, the development plan
Have
has
to
to be
come back
approved
here.
here
Okay.
and then approved by council.
So like a month from now.
But the rezoning is what.
Rezoning could go forward next Monday, but not the development plan. That would have to come back here and then go back to council again in October.
Sure. So would you want a ponding map by Monday, or?
I want everything that the code requires, whatever that may be.
Okay. So where are we at? Do I continue to fund it or not?
Well, I think it's up, yeah, the
I'm ready to
commission can make a,
motion if Tom is ready to.
We had one more question, I think, in back from someone. Did you?
Yeah, I was just,
Would you come up, please?
I want to talk to that fellow.
Don't stand too close to him.
I don't bite. Let me get it straight in my head and kind of what your plans are on where John Compton's property and my property come into the backside.
The two closest, right?
That'd be the ones on Stafford where, nope, and Roberts.
Sure.
Yeah. John's house and my house. Okay. On that property line down there, now, I'm assuming you're going to be digging this all out and down so many feet?
Well, we're more like whatever's existing that isn't on the building, it'll be like a shear cut line where that retaining wall will be. Which
Yep.
that retaining wall was added in here, they didn't know about it until tonight, but it was added in the last week or two. So wherever we build up, it'll come back until X amount of feet from the property line, and then go back down to like Compton's yard will remain the same.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the pipe will be there, and then whenever we, it continues on, as it gets back into that triangle of the property.
Yeah.
That's where we'll start the excavation as far as the ponding issue goes.
Okay.
So
So the actual channel of the creek is still going to be the same going through
where
our,
you're at,
where we're at?
yeah, yeah.
And then you're going to sit there and dig in that triangle area, you're going to dig that down to sit there and supposedly take care of all the spaces you used up there.
Exactly.
Okay. Because I have seen as much as 8 to 10 feet of water up there by that cul-de-sac. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, that's the point. It kind of, where that turn of the property line is kind of where the grade will start. But the creek up your way from the property line, I mean, it shouldn't change.
Okay. So then that's actually what you're saying is it's probably going to help me in keeping the water out or
I think
what?
that's what the computer says. I won't claim anything on that.
I think he's saying it's not going to hurt you.
Yeah, it won't hurt.
All right.
All right, thanks. Any other questions of Doug, comments? Thanks, Doug. I guess, you wanted a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
I would move that we approve the change in zoning to PDR and that we table approval of a development plan until we can come back and be presented with a full development plan.
And I'll second that.
Wait a minute, Mark, you're shaking your head.
I'm not. I'm just listening. Somebody's got a question back here.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Come on up.
If they do go ahead and rezone, and say this project doesn't go through, does that mean the next guy is a wide open base for him? He can do what he...
No.
No, another plan would have to be submitted, so.
No.
Plan
Actually-
unit development always has to have all the plans before they can start, that we have to see.
The PDR gives the neighborhood the best protection that you can have, ideally, because they have to come back to us with a plan, just like here, before it gets approved. So you would have the same opportunity again if another developer would come in with something else. If it's PDR, they have to come back here. If it's not PDR, they can do whatever they have in the R2 overlay. That help explain that a little?
Anything else? Otherwise, we have a motion on the floor by Samantha to change the zoning. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Mark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you very much. This zoning will go to council Monday night,
Correct.
and then hopefully Doug will be back in with a plan next meeting. And just
In October.
in October. Second Monday. So,
So all the questions that you're asking tonight, if you want to make sure those are addressed, you need to come back next month.
Can I just ask, at the very, we're done now, right? So can I ask one more question just from the floor here?
yeah, come on up.
You have to come up.
Next, having to talk about it again, would that address density then?
Yes, it can.
Density a given now?
No, it can all be addressed next month.
Okay, so that you're not just carte blanche giving, you're agreeing to the density?
No.
No.
We're not agreeing to any plan. We're just agreeing to change the zone. There is no plan. It's just we are recommending that the council change the zoning.
Okay, and then later on, we can address the density?
We can address the plan, the entire plan, including the density.
Okay,
Next month.
Next month.
Next month.
next month?
Back here. Next
Yeah,
month. in
October.
October, back here.
I'm sure I'll be here, thank you.
The date is October 12,
Okay.
right? The second Monday of October, October 12.
Another letter.
What?
We'll send another letter.
You'll get another letter.
October, you said?
Yes, 12.
October 12.
Okay, I just noticed on the letter, it said it would be on September 21st.
That's
Well,
the council.
zoning will go, the council meeting is on the 21st, and the zoning that we just voted on then will come before council on the 21st. But we're not going to talk about density or development plan or anything like that with the council.
See, what we get the information here, it goes on to council, and that's next Monday. So we pass the zoning, rezoning, so that goes to council next Monday, the 21st September. Hopefully Doug will be back in October, on the 14th of October, if he has a plan that he can show us. And then we'll discuss all the other areas that we did tonight again and any others that you might have. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay. Then that would go to council the same way after that meeting. So,
Okay.
all right. Moving on. Public hearing on code amendments.
Okay, let me pull that up. So if you remember, last month we discussed three possible changes to the zoning code. And so for our code, we have to have a public hearing here as well as at City Council. So we did notice that in the paper a couple weeks ago. The first one, and I apologize, this is scanned, this is not in color, so it's hard to tell here. But this is a simple change. There's a use called social correctional treatment and counseling services that was only permitted as a special use downtown and in industrial districts. And we felt that was a little exclusionary. We had someone call and say, hey, if we want to do a counseling office, we have to look in the industrial park, which obviously is not the intent of that. And I know there was we talked about possibly it being, like a substantive use agency, but that's actually a different use. That's also a special use that in C1, C2. So the only use here would be changing this, so it'd be a special use in C1 and C2. So the only actual code change is adding this S to this district.
Any questions or comments of Sal?
And I guess there's no one in the public to talk on that one.
Anybody in the audience that would like to speak?
Free.
If not, you need a motion on that?
I don't know, Mark, I guess we just need to accept it in the minutes. I mean,
You need a motion to send it on to the council.
okay.
I'll entertain.
I think it looks
Is this a
good.
public hearing and?
It is.
No
Yes.
one's, okay, and then we move it on to council.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move, we move it on to council.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
All right. The second one is in discussion of cell tower heights. And I know after we talked about last month, we realized that our existing code prohibited at 100 feet, which really didn't allow for allow expansion of any new rural towers. Any inquiries we were getting, most of them were above 100 feet. And, you know, it is no secret that we actually do have cell coverage issues locally, and so we didn't think it was a good idea to maybe discourage cell towers. And we looked at some other surrounding communities, or not even necessarily surrounding, but just other communities our size that do cell tower regulations, and 100 feet is pretty small, pretty short for a cell tower. So we changed it. I know we looked at some options last time. We thought the simplest way would just to have increase the height maximum to 200 feet. That gives them more of the capacity. Every single one is still required. You know, if it's not a disguised tower, it's still required to get a special use permit. There's still a site plan that needs to be submitted, and everyone still has a chance to comment, neighbors included. So that was the change there, just crossing out the 100, changing to 200 in section B. We also talked about in section F of right now our code only requires setback from a residential structure, the height of the tower plus 10 feet. There was some talk about adding just any structure to that, but we did receive some comments, and I know Jake Sprague is here too. He was actually one of the applicants who applied for a cell tower last month before that was going to be over 100 feet. And some discussions that that would prohibit in a lot of locations, just whenever you have properties that do have non-residential structures within that location. And we did see that there is some language in some other communities that we actually require in the engineering building department side of it, the fall zone to be submitted, engineered, stamped, and sealed plans by an engineer licensed in Missouri, that there is a fall zone submitted with that engineered plan, and that determines a setback from a non-residential structure. So the residential will still have to be 200 feet, or I'm sorry, the height of the tower plus 10 feet, and then we give a fall zone for non-residential. Right now, it's nothing. I mean, we don't have it in there at all. It just says from any residential structure. It doesn't mention it from neighboring non-residential. So this is just some language I put in there. I wanted to open up for discussion tonight, and I'm definitely,
So what does it
ideas.
mean to have some engineered license sign off on the fall thing versus just saying, repeat that again?
Yeah, so it says, all wireless support structures except disguised support structures shall be separated from any structure at least a distance equal to the length of the fall zone as submitted by the applicant from an engineer licensed in the state of Missouri. And that
That's
is...
what is, why, what difference is that gonna make if it's, saying that you're using the height of the tower plus 10 feet versus whatever submitted with an engineer's?
I believe that the reason being, and Jake can say, the reason being is that they're not meant to fall the height of the tower. They collapse halfway in, and so you're causing additional setback and hardship, I guess it could be called, for the setback that isn't necessarily necessary. So.
But it's still, regardless of the engineering report, the way I understand this, it would still be at least 200 feet from a residential structure.
Correct, or the height of the tower, correct. Because the first one, F1, oh, no, you're right, I'm sorry,
No,
200 feet
it
from any
says
residential.
200. I mean, the first part of that is.
You're correct, I'm
if
sorry.
it's residential, it's going to be 200 feet away, even if it's a 50-foot tower.
Correct, I'm sorry. I saw that 200 and was thinking height, our new height restriction, but you're correct. That F1 has not changed. That is how it is currently.
Okay.
And Sal, what, first of all, I don't like the use of the term fall zone because that's not defined anywhere, so we'd have to define that somewhere. Secondly, how do we know what standards the engineer is looking at when he determines what that is supposed to be?
I do not have an answer. I am open to discussions on this. When this was brought to my attention, I realized I thought that was a good comment, and so I wanted to open it up for discussion here tonight.
So if an engineer comes in and he says, I've got a piece of property between two commercial buildings, this strip of ground is 20 feet wide, I'm going to put up a 100-foot monopole, but it doesn't need a fall zone, period. We're just, because the engineer sealed it, that's supposed to be good?
The engineer would be liable, wouldn't he?
Well, what's the engineer going to certify anyway?
Yeah.
What is he certifying?
Well-
Just that there's no fall zone?
Or that
And then go find that engineer in 15
Right,
years
I know.
when the tower falls over.
Exactly.
Well, what if,
I assume the engineer is
I think-
certifying that the tower is being built in a manner that it will
Come on now.
collapse rather than, fall on somebody's house, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so the engineer would,
Introduce yourself again.
oh, I'm sorry, I'm Jake Spray with Network Real Estate. We are like Sal said, submitted an application for a new tower in Washington. So basically, to answer your question as best as I can, I'm not an engineer, but the fall zone letter would be, the engineer would be signing off what the fall zone is. So in your scenario of 20 feet between two buildings, he wouldn't certify that there is no fall zone. Basically, it wouldn't be satisfying, and if I'm not talking to the language of the ordinance, but it would have to meet an acceptable outside of the, the fall zone would have to be less than the distance to whatever the structure is. So in your scenario, would not meet that distance unless it, for some, if it was like a 25 or 50-foot tower or something and collapse that way, but they wouldn't, basically the engineering drawing, or the engineering signing off on a fall zone gives you the radius.
My understanding is some of these towers are supposed to telescope inside of themselves. They're not supposed to fall over, they're supposed to telescope down.
Correct, that is for some of them.
So if that's the case, that particular tower would have zero fall zone. Because it's not going to fall over, it's going to telescope inside of itself.
I'm not aware of the telescoping towers. The ones that we deal with mostly are the self-support, which are the tri-leg, yeah, and those are built in about 20-foot sections, and those collapse at those break points. And then monopoles, they're the ones that I deal with are usually stacked, not I haven't seen the telescoped ones that you're talking about.
I will also bring up that this only got introduced because we were wanting to discuss the height of the tower, and then the setback from non-residential structures was noticed at the last discussion. We have not had that issue, so I just want to let it, that it is still a possibility to just vote on the height of the tower change and not change anything in F2. Leave it as is. I just want to make sure everyone's aware that that is an option tonight as well. Because again, I knew I put that in there, and I just wanted to put license in the state of Missouri because I thought we'd have to have some engineer. But
If I recall the discussion right, the concern was, why are we only worried about whether it falls on a residence versus why are we not worried about whether it falls on a factory? I mean, I think the concern is valid. Certainly, the bigger these towers get, but I have to agree with Mark. If we have a term that's not defined, I think we're setting up a problem with the word fall zone.
And what set of standards are these engineers going to look at? Is one engineer going to look at one set of standards, another engineer going to look at another set? One says, yes, a 20-foot fall zone is adequate, another says, no, it should be 100 feet?
Yeah, my
There's
question
nothing
is,
objective that we can look at to say, does it or doesn't it meet the requirements? All we're looking at is a piece of paper with an engineer's seal on it, and we're saying, trust in the engineer.
because are all
Way to
towers
verify.
made the same?
What's
No.
that?
Are
No.
all towers made the same?
No, that's what
Yeah.
he was just saying.
I know,
He was
that's what I
right.
mean. That's,
Yeah,
I,
it could be
Yeah.
anything.
it could be anything. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that statement in
Yeah,
there either.
I know, and I totally get it. I threw out an option of discussion. I mean, we had the height of the tower discussed last month, but then if you look at our last tower that was approved, that would have been prohibited. We'd be prohibiting another tower if we change. So the whole point of this code change was to make sure we weren't prohibiting telecommunication facilities. And then I'm just saying we're upping the height, but then making it more restrictive in a different location, keeping the problem that we originally had.
Do we have any other options?
I think you could just do the height of the tower. I mean, I think you either have to figure out a way to define fall zone or do the height of the tower.
So what are other communities doing?
This was written from originally from another community that did not, same thing as us. You have to have it from a residential structure.
Okay.
Nothing they didn't mention it out of a commercial structure.
So any other structure that's occupied, as far as a business
As a-
or factory or whatever?
Wasn't mentioned.
I did kind of a quick look this afternoon, John, and everything I saw was the height of the tower plus 10 feet, at minimum, the height of the tower plus 10 feet. Some were 20 feet, but at minimum height plus 10.
And Mark, is that whether it's residential or commercial or?
It didn't matter.
Didn't
Okay.
matter.
So, I mean, I would be comfortable with that. I mean, I know that may be more restrictive than what we want to be, but that certainly makes me comfortable.
Well, if
That-
somebody has any type of structure and that tower falls on it, somebody's still gonna have to be liable for it and stuff, and that's what you're saying, is if you're gonna protect it, you don't want it inside that zone, period.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
not just
I don't-
liability. I mean,
yeah,
if
and
it
I-
falls
Well,
and hurts
right.
people or, you know.
It's not so much the liability, it's that you're going to injure somebody.
Oh,
or
yeah,
Could
right.
injure somebody if it's an occupied building.
But still, it's somebody else's property that the thing's gonna be damaging and whatever else and stuff too.
And it takes the issue of another definition out of the zoning ordinance.
It
Right.
does.
If we just leave it, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
How does that work in the insurance business, Tom?
It doesn't.
Just so you know, I mean, the way it's written also, well, disguised support structures don't need a special use permit.
Cell tower falls on
Yeah.
your house? Okay,
Like a tree
good.
falling, correct?
Just don't let it happen.
Or if it does, don't call me.
So,
So what do we need? We just needed a motion to accept the change B and not F, correct?
Yeah, and then I need a motion to be the height of the tower plus, that's what it sounds like, height of the tower plus 10, which is what we discussed last month. I just wanted to open it to discussion.
it should be F2, right? So F2 would be height of tower plus 10 feet for all structures.
Yeah, unless except disguised structures, yes.
So you're gonna delete F1?
No.
Since you're
No.
saying
So
residential.
really, what we would be, okay, if I'm looking at this right, and in F2, what we are talking about saying is that
All you
that
would do is-
redlined residential would stay redlined, and that word would be removed. We would take the red line off of the height of the support structure plus 10 feet and leave that in, and then we would actually cross out the
Delete.
length of the fall zone as submitted by the applicant from an engineer licensed in the state of Missouri.
The only change from your current code is strike the word residential.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's a simple way to explain it. I make a motion that we leave F2 like it is, but strike residential.
second.
you good with that, Mark?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Do we need to also vote on that B, the total
Yes.
height? Because we have, I would make a motion that we approve section B regarding increasing the total height to 200 feet.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Sal, anything else?
Yep. Last one is the height requirements in C2. If you remember, we discussed this last month as well to allow for 4 stories. We think it's a little bit antiquated. It was originally written probably because of our ladder trucks, and now there's just more technology, fire rating, sprinkler systems, that kind of thing that's required on these commercial buildings. So, and I think, I apologize, last time I had 50 feet, that was in my head, but we currently have 45 are 3 stories, so if you do 15-foot stories, that would be 4 stories or 60 feet.
Is this all over the community?
Just C2.
C2?
Yeah, anything that's C2. Downtown already allows 8 stories or 100 feet. But
Editorial.
this would just be in our C2 commercial, which is pretty typical for highway corridor commercial.
I'll move that we accept this.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Sal,
That's it.
want to welcome Gretchen. I forgot.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Gretchen will be here till the end of the year, it sounds like, right?
It sounds like.
So, you had a good first meeting.
Yeah, Mark was like, nothing's been on the agenda.
This is easy after what you've been through.
Used to this.
One last motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, boy.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, sorry, here's the other.
Those are yours. There you go.
So I sat down and wrote. Okay, now, we have to edit.
So we have to.
You decided to rent out your house. Oh, I'm sorry, we can't let you do that. It's not a rental house.
Does that work?
Yep, you'd be happy about that.
She is our